Hi guys, welcome to section D. We're going to talk about the muscular system today, okay? So there's different types of muscles. The skeletal muscles are what work along with the skeleton though to allow us to move, okay? And we can see those right there in the middle, these skeletal muscles, okay? The muscle cells themselves contract, meaning they shorten, and that's how those muscles work. So when you have a whole bunch of muscles that shorten, that's what pulls the bone into position. Okay, so muscles never push, they always pull. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. These skeletal muscles are also called striated muscles because they have these little stripes in them. And they are considered a voluntary muscle, meaning we have control over them. You might twitch or something, but for the most part, our brain is controlling with intention our skeletal muscles. Our brain is also controlling the other muscles, but it's without our conscious thought or intention. I can think, all right, I'm going to pick up this pencil, and I picked up the pencil. Okay, that's voluntary muscle. Tendons are what connect muscles to bones. It's a connective tissue and very strong. Okay, the Achilles tendon is probably the biggest, most commonly known tendon in our body. And it's a very strong material that connects that calf muscle down to our heel. Okay. There's also two other types of muscles. They're both involuntary muscles. Okay, so the cardiac muscle and smooth muscle are both known as involuntary, meaning we don't have control over those. Okay, smooth muscle just looks like normal cells. It's not striped at all. It doesn't really look like a muscle cell. That's what is in our blood vessels and our digestive system, and it helps squeeze that. So when we swallow, our esophagus actually squeezes the food down. Same with the intestines, and that's done by smooth muscle. Our blood vessels need a little bit of help getting blood back to our heart, and that smooth muscle helps squeeze that. Okay, that's an involuntary muscle. The third kind is cardiac muscle. Now, cardiac muscle is kind of a mix between the two. Cardiac muscle is still striped. It's very similar to this skeletal muscle, but it's completely involuntary. We can't control our heart rate. We can try to slow down our heart or our breathing to calm our heart rate down, but our heart beats despite what we want it to do. Okay. All right, there's a bunch of different muscles in the body, and you can see that they all attach to the skeleton. You know, I've still got my buddy Pedro back here. The names of the muscles, and we're going to talk about some in class, and you're going to be responsible for some. The names of these muscles might be named by shape. Okay, so the deltoid is kind of this triangular shape. A delta is the Greek letter delta, and it's a triangle. The trapezius is like a little trapezoid. They might be named by the bone that they attach to, like the biceps femoris. It attaches to the femur, okay? Or the size. We've got maximus and we've got minor. Maximus is a big muscle. Minor is for a smaller muscle. We've got pectoralis, that's our chest muscles here, major and minor. We've got gluteus maximus, that's your butt muscles. We've got some other muscles that have that major and minor differentiation. We're probably not going to get into that much detail though, but you will be responsible for some of the muscles. All right, so how do muscles work? They almost always work in pairs, okay? Your arm is the easiest example to talk about, okay? One muscle will contract, meaning it shortens, and that will cause a certain movement, and then it will relax, and then the opposing muscle will contract and assist in that. Okay, so muscles never pull; they never push; they always pull. Okay, so if I want to pick something up, okay, I'm going to pretend my phone's really heavy, and I want to pick it up. My bicep is contracting; it's shortening. My bicep is actually attached to my humerus up top here, and it's attached to my lower arm. It's attached to my radius, I believe. And when that muscle, it's attached with those tendons, when that muscle shortens, it pulls up that lower part of my arm. Okay. Now, depending on what I'm doing, it might be enough just to relax those muscles and let those down. But if I want to push something in that direction, let's say I need to push this weight back down or whatever it is you're doing. The bicep's not going to push. The tricep is then going to contract, and it's attached on the opposite side, and it's going to pull the arm down in that direction. Okay. When the bicep contracts and shortens, that's called flexion, or the flexor of the two, the pair. When the tricep contracts, the bicep relaxes. This is called extension, or the extensor. Okay. We can also talk about the muscles as agonists and antagonists. Okay. The contracting muscle would be the agonist, and the relaxing muscle would be the antagonist. The opposite muscle would be the antagonist. You don't really need to know that. Just understand that these muscles really work in pairs. Okay. All right, so this is kind of the big complicated process of how these muscle cells work. We will watch a video on this. It's pretty cool how it all works. If you can remember back to the beginning of the year, we talked about cellular respiration. Remember, that's the opposite of photosynthesis. And that's how our cells use oxygen to break down the food we eat, and they get the glucose out of the food we eat, and they break it down, and they produce this thing called ATP. Okay, so when you hear about your muscles using energy or needing energy, they use that ATP. Okay, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and the ATP is what allows those muscle cells to shorten. Okay, it can also be like part of the chemical reaction is ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, only two phosphates. You don't need to worry about the difference between the two there. So in normal muscular function, we've got plenty of oxygen, there's plenty of ATP, and our muscles are working. If you're working out a lot, though, you might not be getting enough oxygen. This is why our heart rate goes up. This is why we breathe faster when we're working out, because we need more oxygen. Our muscles need that oxygen to be able to produce the ATP for the muscular contractions. Okay. If there's not enough oxygen available, your muscle cells will then rely on lactic acid fermentation. Remember, that's producing ATP without oxygen, but it produces far less ATP. It's not as efficient at all, but it does allow us to keep going. When we rely on lactic acid fermentation, our muscles get very sore because that acid buildup makes those muscles more fatigued. And so if you've ever worked out before and been really sore the next day, that tells you you probably started relying on this lactic acid fermentation. And eventually we just get exhausted and our muscles, you just can't do anymore. Okay. You kind of work your muscles to failure. If you're cold, get up and move around. Okay. Walk, do jumping jacks. If you ever see Mrs. Augustine out in the parking lot, she'll be jumping around when it's cold. That's because when you move your muscles, when your muscles are contracting, they're producing heat. The chemical reactions that they're going through actually produce heat. This is also why we get goosebumps when it's cold. This is why we shiver when it's cold, because the movement of even those little tiny muscles produces heat, and it helps warm our bodies up. Amazing design that God made for us. All right, that's it for muscles. Bye-bye.